it or not, the first ever cheesecakes were made 4,000 years ago. Cheesecake has had a surprisingly storied history. It's a noble, creamy monument to humanity's long-standing ability to weaponize dairy and has survived empires, plagues, and revolutions. We owe the creation of cheesecake to the Greeks, the people who gave us democracy, theatre, and the ability to argue about everything. Archaeologists have found cheese molds from around 2000 BCE on the island of Samos, and the suspicion is that ancient Greeks whipped up a sort of proto-cheesecake by pounding fresh cheese into submission, then adding some honey and baking it. So, let's find out if smushing some honey into cheese qualifies as a dessert. So given that these early cheesecakes trace back to around 4,000 years ago, we obviously don't have any recipes to go off of. So this is my interpretation of an ancient Greek cheesecake, because just mixing cream cheese and honey doesn't give me a lot of time to unpack the history of it. So in a large mixing bowl, spoon in a kilo of ricotta cheese. We don't know what ancient Greek cheese would have tasted like or what they would have used, so I thought today I'd annoy the Greeks by using an Italian alternative. Use a whisk or electric hand mixer to beat the cheese until smooth and creamy, then crack in 2 medium eggs and beat them into the cream cheese. Add 5 tablespoons of fine semolina flour to the mixture. Ancient Greeks likely used coarsely ground wheat or barley meal to thicken and structure their early cheesecakes by absorbing moisture, followed by a pinch of sea salt to balance the sweetness. Then drizzle in 100 grams of Greek honey and grate in the zest of 1 lemon directly into the bowl. The lemon zest isn't strictly historical, but it reflects the citrus fruits known to the ancient Mediterranean and brightens the flavour. Stir everything together until the batter is smooth and cohesive. Then let it rest for 10 to 15 minutes in the fridge, just to give the semolina some time to absorb the moisture, which gives us just enough time to look at the history of cheesecake. Years ago, archaeologists poking around the Greek island of Samos found ancient molds and tools that date back to around 2000 BCE. These molds seem to have been used to shape or bake curdled cheese mixtures. The locals likely whipped up their proto-cheesecakes using whatever was hanging around the Mediterranean pantry, sheep or goat's cheese, honey for sweetness, and maybe a bit of wheat flour to keep it all from collapsing. There are also accounts of cheesecake being served to athletes during the first Olympic Games in 776 BCE, because nothing says peak physical performance like a slice of dairy before getting oiled up and wrestling another man in front of a crowd, or at least in my experience. Then around 500 BCE, a Greek physician called Aegimus wrote an entire book on placunta, which I believe shares an etymology with placenta. Placunta being a cake made with layers of dough, probably similar to modern phyllo pastry, filled with a sweet mixture of cheese and honey. Then, the Romans pinched the cheesecake idea from the Greeks and decided that it needed more ritual sacrifice. They called their version libum, and according to Virgil, Ovid, Horace, and other Latin authors, was often baked as an offering to the gods. As the Roman Empire's influence spread across Europe, cheesecake followed, morphing to suit the whims of whichever tribe had just learned how to churn butter. And during the Middle Ages, different cultures started adding things like cream, eggs, and butter. Over time, Europeans traveling to America brought their recipes for cheesecake with them. Enter William Lawrence, a dairyman from New York who in 1872 tried to make Neufchâtel, a French cheese so pretentious it probably wore a cravat. Legend has it that he bungled it completely and created cream cheese as a byproduct. Then in the 1930s, a New York delicatessen owner named Arnold Rubin claimed credit for inventing New York cheesecake. And he did this by substituting traditional curd cheese with cream cheese in the late 1920s. However, it's more likely that Rubin popularized this style of cheesecake rather than actually inventing it, as there were some earlier recipes using cream cheese that appeared in cooking magazines dating back to as early as 1909. And that's the history of cheesecake, a tale of curds, courage, and absolutely no concern for lactose intolerance. Back to the cheesecake. Once rested, pour the batter into a greased springform tin and smooth over the top with a spatula. Place the pan into the center of your oven and bake for 35 to 40 minutes, or until the top is just turning golden and a toothpick inserted in the middle comes out clean. Like mine, it may crack a little bit, but I can cover it in post. At this point, I'm going to make a pistachio praline to sprinkle on the top. This isn't historical. We don't have records of this going on our ancient Greek cheesecakes, particularly as the pistachio tree is not native to Greece. But a lot later, around 330 BCE, Alexander the Great went on his little world tour through Persia, conquering, looting, and his his army apparently brought back pistachios. And without a biscuit base, I feel this cheesecake is really gonna need some texture. So I'm placing 150 grams of shelled pistachios in a dry pan over medium heat and toasting them for a few minutes. Then I'm setting them aside while I work on the caramel. In a medium saucepan, I'm combining 150 grams of granulated sugar with a couple of tablespoons of water. Stir it just enough to moisten the sugar, then heat the mixture over a medium heat without stirring any further. Let it bubble and cook until the caramel turns a deep amber color. Then once the caramel reaches the right color, quickly stir in the toasted pistachios so they're evenly coated in the caramel. Then pour them out over the parchment paper or a silicone mat. Let it cool completely. This should take about 30 minutes. Then once it's fully hardened, break up the pieces and blitz them in a food processor until you have a nice crunchy crumble that you can use to decorate the cheesecake, along with some slices of baked fig. I am really excited about this one. Ancient Greek cheesecake. Oh, that is so tasty. It's really fresh. The lemon zest is lovely. I would have maybe put a little bit of lemon juice in there second time round. But do you know what? The hero for me is actually that pistachio praline. That is delicious, and I'm gonna be making that again very, very soon. On this one, I have 0 notes. Yes, it's my interpretation, it's not based on an actual recipe, but based on the raw ingredients, this was one of the many things the Greeks got right.